had on our list there, which was some certain company that was doing testing or contributing to, let's see, yeah, people who care about the. Okay, so this was the Moz thing, correct?
Yeah. Okay. I know I had put more than one in. What are you guys laughing at? What am I doing?
Ammon.
Ammon, of course, Debra was showing off his Moz shirt.
Oh. Oh, wow, that's.
I will see. What Ray doesn't know is I can't pay attention to Ammon because he's extremely distracting, as you have just learned. Last time in the chat, he kept me occupied, so when people were asking me questions, I couldn't answer them. So
He's
just
trying to keep you on your toes, man.
I have a little piece of tape over his window. Just ignore him. Stop. If you're going to lift up your shirt, show us something worth looking at, not Moz. And I'm not going to reciprocate. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I didn't click the have to be 18 and over button before we started, so you got to be careful.
No children here today. So Dave asked us to submit questions, or something like that. And my question was about the article that recently came out, pertained to the article that recently came out that was featured on Moz.com, where the head of Moz.com, Rand Fishkin, wanted to run a survey and have 100 or so webmasters, or a lot of people, I should say, contribute so that they could find out how the search engines run, air quotes if you can't see me, and how social media works. Mm-hmm. And then they want to report their findings to the greater population. And I wanted to know why. You know, my question is, does anybody else think that that's not a good idea? And I wasn't really sure why. You know, why that wanted to happen. I can see some negative things going on. Bill, I can see some negative things going on with that, but I don't understand why. And so I was hoping that we can open it up for discussion and see how everybody else felt. I don't think it's a good idea. I think the people that participate, you know, could potentially fall into some trouble, if you will, you know, or maybe get their hands slapped because, you know, what they're trying to do is kind of manipulative. On the other hand, it's always, you know, nice to have an idea about how things work, but I mean, as soon as it's published, you know, Google would come along and basically change it. So that's my question. Does anybody else think it's a bad idea? I just don't know that it's a good idea.
Well, you asked for the why. So the why is obvious, like publicity and links on their end. As far as like I just think that if you have 100 to 200 webmasters participating in something, your ability to ensure that the only changes that have been made are the changes that you've asked them to make and that they're reporting that they've made. I just think there's way too many variables there. I mean, we've done that. We've done some form of that. I know everybody in this group has had their own little group of webmasters where we have all done crack to sites, except for Bill, who's shaking his head, right. Where we have done crack to sites and kind of compared notes. But, you know, I do it with people that I trust and with people that I know are reporting to me exactly what's been done, exactly what hasn't been done. And then the other thing is too, like, yeah, like I don't want to advertise. I don't care if I'm running the cleanest SEO campaign on the face of the planet. I don't want to advertise to anybody what I'm doing SEO on and for what, especially when it comes to, for me, from a client perspective.
I'm going to be a little bit more generous. I think the why.
Well, of course, you're wearing the T-shirt. No kidding.
We all know. Man, so. We all know testing is important.
Yes.
We all know testing is important. But the thing is, to keep it private and where it can't be messed about with is just as important. That's essential to the testing. And every time you say to people, oh, look, here's the test I'm going to run. Here's plenty of time for you to mess it up. Tell you what, Google, this is going to be important. You know that FUD you spread everywhere? Well, all you have to do now is fix these results and you can convince thousands of idiots. Of course, that's a terrible idea. It's a bad, bad idea.
Again, go ahead, T.
I was going to say, we've talked about this, Dave. What's like testing? You can't really find anything too much definitive anymore. There's so many pieces to the algorithm, none of us can scale it enough that we can reproduce what Google is doing, which makes it next to useless. You can get an idea, indicator, something that you can try and know that, A, it's not going to hurt you, but, you know, getting anything definitive, and that makes it, to me, a waste of time. Like,
well, you know, therein lies the problem, Bill, is how do you properly isolate things? It's almost impossible to isolate everything. And then what's going to work in one query space is going to be different in another query space. It's not like Google's, you know, treating everything across the board the same. So now, you know, you fall into this problem. Like, you're testing, what kind of sites were they on? Informational sites, you know what I mean? What kind of equity does that site already have? So you're getting anecdotal evidence, but again, you try and reproduce, and that's what happens with this stuff is fucking Moz will put it out there, and a zillion little idiots will run around saying this is how Google works. And
when Google does experiments, and they supposedly do at least 50,000 a year, they can turn to one data center, run the experiment on that for half an hour, and they've got millions of searchers, millions of sites. Not 100, not 200, not 200 where people are exchanging information via email instead of some way that scales really well. But regardless of that, there are thresholds that depend upon what we might consider to be really insignificant things. Google came out with one patent where they talked about if for a local search, if the name of a business is longer than 8 letters, they might treat it one way. If it's smaller than 8 letters, they might treat it another way. And it's like, how are we supposed to even guess that would be a threshold for a point of data? We're not.
And that's always been the problem with any of these ranking factors things. I remember, you know, a week or two ago when you were going off about that ranking factors post, the same kind of deal. Yeah, there's so many elements, there's so many pieces and thresholds for each of those pieces that how do you isolate anything to get definitive information? You know, again, you can get some anecdotal information maybe, but well, you know, how many sites are we talking? Like you're saying, if it's 100 sites, that probably isn't going to tell you much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know, Deb. I think it's all a bit irresponsible, but you know, it's nothing new over there. So.
Yeah, irresponsible and Moz, they don't.
The problem is the way that you try and approach tests. You know, he is trying to normalise. I will give him this. He, you know, put the links he wanted to test, one with anchor text, one without, on the same page. So I mean, there's no difference in the links, but he thinks. But of course there is. Now, you've now got text on a page, and you've got one link that's got the words in it, and the other one that's got the words near it. That's still not the same as not having anchor text. We've known for years from dozens of patents that text near the anchor text or text that's based on the context of the page all affects the link. So you haven't really removed it.
I didn't see any mention in that post either whether or not they looked into the existing backlink profile for the individual pages or for the domains that the pages were on. Like, there was no mention of that. It was just we threw X amount of links at this with no anchor, X amount of links at this with anchor. And then my other question too was, were they actually in control of those sites? Because I was really concerned. The way that I read it was like they threw random links at 2 different sites to kind of see what happened, and if they didn't control those sites, you know, that seemed very reckless to me. If they controlled those sites or if they had permission, then I apologize. But if not, that was very reckless to do that to 2 other webmasters. So
you're saying there really isn't a controlled environment that you feel comfortable with?
Yeah, well, I mean, like back in the day when we did this, we would throw up brand new sites, and we would do, you know, very, very specific and very targeted, you know, exactly like if this one site we were going to build all anchor text, and this other site we were going to build all not anchor text. And we were just much more specific about it, and we were much more quiet about it. There was nobody trying to alter the results. I mean, the other problem that you get into too, right? So you have 100 to 200 SEOs that are helping to run these tests, and I say this with all due respect because I own an agency as well, but how many of them have a conflict of interest in that they offer a specific type of service as their primary service, and they would love for that service to be what's proven to be the most effective in Google's rankings. So what's to stop them from getting 15 links towards a page, but going to a bunch of their friends and saying, hey, can you get people to click on this link so that we can get some toolbar signals and traffic signals going along with it and things. I mean, there's so many ways to screw with it when you're having 100 to 200 random people in, and I don't think that there is a way to find 200 people that are willing to put their sites on blast that you can personally vet each one of them to ensure that they're not going to muck with the process.